Luke Harrison had always loved machines. From the time he was a child, he would spend hours fixing broken gadgets, taking them apart, and putting them back together. His small home on the edge of the city was filled with half-finished projects, wires, and tools that seemed to have a life of their own. People often told him he wasted his time, but Luke knew better. Machines had stories, and he wanted to hear them all. One evening, a message arrived that made his heart race. A scrap auction was taking place on the far edge of the Outer Rim. It was a place where the galaxy's unwanted and broken ships ended up, and occasionally, rare treasures were hidden among the junk. Rumors swirled that even legendary ships, long thought lost, sometimes appeared at these auctions. But humans were rarely allowed near the most prized vessels. Mythic ships. The aliens called them old, powerful, and almost sacred. No human had ever owned one. No human had even touched one. Luke read the details again, a small smile spreading across his face. Humans were not allowed to bid on mythics, but the auction had thousands of other ships. Maybe he could find something special. Maybe, just maybe, he could get closer than anyone ever had. Without thinking twice, he packed his tools and set course for the Outer Rim. The journey was long, passing asteroid belts, drifting comets, and distant stars that seemed to hang in the blackness like frozen lanterns. Luke spent the time checking his equipment, reviewing old blueprints, and imagining what he might find. He had no idea that this trip would change his life forever. The auction site was a massive space station built into a rocky asteroid. Ships of all sizes crowded the docking bays, some barely holding together, others shiny but outdated. Luke maneuvered his small transport carefully, avoiding collisions with hulking alien freighters and odd-looking craft that seemed to defy logic. The air inside the station buzzed with chatter, a mix of alien languages and strange mechanical sounds. He felt a thrill he had never felt before. The auction hall was even larger than he had imagined. Rows of ships, some covered in dust and debris, others polished and ready to sell, filled every corner. The smell of oil, metal, and recycled air hung thick in the room. Luke's eyes scanned every vessel. Most were small shuttles, transports, or military relics. But in the far corner, hidden beneath a tarp, was something different. Something that made his heart skip a beat. It was huge. Taller than anything Luke had ever seen, with smooth lines that looked almost alive. The metal glimmered faintly under the lights, and even covered in dust. It seemed elegant and strong. He knew immediately that this was no ordinary ship. He had only heard stories of ships like this, ships that could travel faster than any known engine, ships that could defend themselves without a pilot, ships that belonged in legends, not scrap yards. Luke moved closer, careful not to draw attention. Most bidders were aliens, their eyes scanning paperwork and digital readouts, but no one seemed interested in this particular ship. Perhaps they knew its reputation. Perhaps they feared it. Luke's pulse quickened. He had never been so close to a mythic. He crouched next to the ship, brushing dust from the hull with a gloved hand. Strange symbols were etched into the metal, glowing faintly, almost as if the ship recognized him. He traced the lines with his fingers, feeling a hum of energy beneath the surface. It was alive in a way he couldn't explain. The auction rules said humans could not bid on mythics, but there was no rule that said he could not look, no rule that said he could not try to understand it. Luke's curiosity overpowered his caution. He found a small access panel and, after a moment of hesitation, pried it open with his tools. Inside were wires, circuits, and systems unlike anything he had ever seen. Alien technology. Complex, precise, and intelligent. Maybe. He studied the patterns, careful not to break anything. It was as if the ship was waiting for someone who understood it. A voice interrupted his thoughts. Are you really going to touch that? Luke looked up to see a tall alien with long limbs and skin that shimmered like metal. Its eyes were sharp, cold, and judging. I'm just looking, Luke said quickly, trying to keep his voice steady. The alien tilted its head. Humans should not touch mythics. You will regret it. Luke swallowed, trying not to show fear. I understand, he said, but I want to learn. I want to see if I can fix it. Make it work again. The alien stared for a moment, then shrugged. Foolish, but it is your choice. Don't say I didn't warn you. Luke nodded, his heart pounding. He returned to the ship, ignoring the alien. He could feel the ship's energy, subtle but present. It was waiting, like a puzzle meant for someone clever enough to solve it. He had always loved challenges. This would be the greatest one yet. The auction began, and the room filled with noise. Aliens bickered over bids, their voices loud and harsh. Luke stayed hidden, watching, waiting for the right moment. Most of the attention was on smaller ships, easier to control and sell. The Mythic sat quietly in its corner, untouched, almost patient. When the bidding slowed, Luke realized he had an idea. He had enough credits saved from years of engineering work. If he could bid quietly, carefully, maybe he could win. Maybe no one would notice. He adjusted his small wrist device, connected it to the auction system, and placed a modest bid, far below the value anyone would expect. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the alien next to the auction monitor froze. The device flashed red. Someone else had bid. Luke's pulse raced. He doubled the bid, careful not to overpay. The other bidder hesitated. Another bid. He matched it. The tension was unbearable. Finally, after what felt like hours, the gavel fell, or rather, the auctioneer's device signaled the winner. Luke's small hand shook as he realized he had done it. He had won the Mythic. The room murmured in disbelief. A human had won a Mythic. Luke knew the real challenge was just beginning. The aliens were watching him. Others would try to take the ship, to claim it for themselves. But he had something they did not. He had knowledge. He had curiosity. He had a mind that refused to accept limits. Moving quickly, he arranged for the Mythic to be transported to a hidden hangar. It was a risky move. The transport corridors were crowded, and surveillance cameras were everywhere. But Luke's small transport fit into narrow spaces, and he used every trick he knew to avoid detection. Every step was tense. Every corner could hide a threat. But he pressed on. Finally, the Mythic arrived at the hangar, covered in tarps and secured with temporary locks. Luke stood back, breathing heavily. The ship looked different in private, almost alive. It hummed softly, vibrating as if acknowledging his presence. He could hardly believe it. He had done what no human had done before. He spent the next hours examining the ship. The control panels were unlike anything he had seen. Smooth surfaces with symbols that changed when he touched them. Lights pulsed in rhythm with a sound he could almost feel rather than hear. Wires connected to systems that seemed to anticipate his actions. He realized that the Mythic was not just a ship. It was intelligent. It was alive. Luke spent days studying it, taking careful notes, testing each system, and learning slowly. The more he learned, the more amazed he became. Engines that could bend light, shields that could reshape themselves, weapons that were more defensive than offensive. Everything about the ship was advanced beyond imagination. At night, he would sit in the cockpit, staring at the stars through the cracked viewports. The station outside seemed distant, unimportant. Here, in this hangar with the Mythic, he felt alive. He felt part of something bigger. He could not explain why the ship seemed to respond to him, why it seemed to trust him, but he knew it was true. Luke realized he had discovered more than a ship. He had discovered a chance to show the galaxy what humans could do. They were often underestimated, laughed at, ignored. But here, with the Mythic, he could prove that humans could rise to challenges no one else could face. As the sun rose over the asteroid field outside, Luke made a silent promise. He would learn the secrets of the Mythic. He would unlock its power, and he would use it to show the galaxy that humans were not weak, not small, not simple. They were clever, brave, bold. The first part of his adventure had ended. The real journey, the one that would test every skill, every idea, every spark of ingenuity he had, was about to begin. And Luke Harrison was ready. Luke Harrison spent the first few hours just staring at the Mythic. The ship was quiet now, sitting in the hangar, but Luke could feel the energy beneath the metal skin. It was different from any machine he had ever touched. Most ships were engines, wires, and metal. This one seemed alive, like it had a mind of its own. He opened a panel near the cockpit and examined the controls. Strange symbols glowed faintly. When he touched one, the lights shifted, and a soft hum filled the air. Luke's heart raced. The ship was responding to him. It was like it recognized that he belonged here. He decided to start small. He wanted to understand the systems before turning anything on. He worked carefully, cleaning the panels, checking wires, and labeling connections. The ship was old, covered in dust, but Luke could see its potential. Every line, every wire, every system was built with skill far beyond human design. Luke connected his small diagnostic tools. The screen lit up with information he could barely understand. Alien letters, strange codes, and symbols filled the display. He studied them for hours. Slowly, he began to make sense of the patterns. Some systems were engines, others were shields, and some were something he had never seen before. He tried to power one small system. The hum grew stronger, like the ship was waking from a long sleep. Lights on the panels shifted in patterns that made no sense at first, but Luke noticed something amazing. The ship seemed to anticipate what he would do next. When he reached for a panel, lights flashed in response. When he typed a command, the system adjusted before he finished. Luke smiled. This was no ordinary ship. It was intelligent. It could think, in some way, and it seemed to trust him. That trust was something humans had earned in history with cleverness, courage, and care. Luke understood immediately that this was the beginning of a partnership. He spent the next day exploring the ship's interior. It was larger than it looked from the outside. Hidden compartments, storage rooms, and maintenance tunnels wound through the hull. Luke found strange devices he had never seen. Panels that displayed three-dimensional star maps, and engines that seemed to glow with inner light. At night, Luke sat in the cockpit and tried to understand the navigation system. The ship displayed star charts that were far beyond human technology. Entire galaxies, nebulae, and wormholes appeared as glowing paths in the air. Luke realized the ship could travel faster than any human engine. It could move through space almost instantly, bending light and energy around it. But Luke was careful. He knew the galaxy watched humans closely, especially when they tried to handle technology they were not allowed to touch. Rumors of a human with a Mythic had already started spreading. Sensors in the outer rim picked up unusual energy signatures. Luke had to hide the ship. He had to make sure no one followed him. He spent days repairing engines and systems, testing small controls. He learned how to start the ship's auxiliary systems, which ran quietly and without attracting attention. The energy hummed softly, like a heartbeat. Luke felt a strange comfort. The ship was alive, and it was alive with him. One morning, while adjusting the shield controls, Luke noticed the ship reacted differently than expected. A panel flashed, and a soft voice, mechanical but clear, spoke in a language he did not understand. The ship was communicating. He pressed buttons, trying to respond. Slowly, he realized the ship was learning from him. It was not just responding. It was observing. Luke spent hours experimenting. He tried small maneuvers in the hangar, moving sections of the ship, testing systems. The Mythic followed his commands perfectly. When he paused, it paused. When he hesitated, it seemed to think. It was more than a machine. It was a partner. But not everyone would allow this partnership. Luke noticed sensors outside the hangar. Alien monitoring ships had appeared near the asteroid. They hovered silently, scanning the area. Luke's pulse quickened. They were here because of him, because of the ship. He knew he could not stay. The ship was too large to hide for long, and alien authorities would arrive if he stayed. Luke made a decision. He would take the ship out, test it beyond the hangar, and understand its true abilities. He checked the engines, the shields, and the navigation system. Everything seemed ready. With careful precision, Luke activated the engines. The hum grew louder, filling the hangar. Lights flashed across the panels, and the ship began to move smoothly, almost gliding. Luke felt a thrill he had never felt before. This was it. The Mythic was alive, and he was at its controls. He guided the ship out of the hangar, through narrow corridors, avoiding detection. The alien sensors outside were scanning, but Luke had anticipated them. Using small side corridors and hidden routes, he moved the ship into open space. The stars stretched around him, distant and beautiful. He was free, if only for a moment. Luke tested the engines slowly at first. The ship responded perfectly. He increased the speed, and the Mythic accelerated beyond anything he had imagined. Stars stretched into long lines, and the ship moved with a smoothness that no human engine could match. He laughed aloud, feeling alive and powerful, but he did not let excitement blind him. The alien monitoring ships were still nearby. He had to stay careful. Using clever maneuvers, he guided the Mythic through asteroid fields, hiding from the sensors. The ship seemed to enjoy it, weaving smoothly through the rocks, almost like it was playing a game with him. Luke experimented with the shields. They bent light around the ship, making it almost invisible to the monitoring ships. He realized the Mythic could hide itself completely. The aliens had underestimated humans. They assumed humans would break the ship, fail to control it, or panic. But Luke was clever. He adapted. He survived. He tested small weapons systems, only defensive ones. The panels lit up, responding to his commands instantly. The ship seemed to understand his intentions. It was not violent. It only wanted to protect him. Luke felt a connection. He realized that the Mythic was not just a tool. It was a being, intelligent, cautious, and trusting. As the day passed, Luke grew more confident. He pushed the ship further, exploring the asteroid belt and nearby planets. He discovered hidden dangers, debris, unstable satellites, and rogue ships, but the Mythic handled everything perfectly. Luke's instincts, combined with the ship's intelligence, allowed them to navigate areas no human had ever crossed safely. Night fell over the outer rim, stars glimmering in the blackness. Luke rested in the cockpit, studying the star maps. He noticed points of light on the navigation display, other ships moving in ways that suggested they were searching for him. The aliens were not giving up. They would come for the Mythic. Luke's mind raced. He needed a plan. He could not allow the ship to be taken. He could not return it. Not yet. He had only begun to understand its potential. If he could learn its secrets, He could show the galaxy what humans were capable of. They had always been underestimated, overlooked, and dismissed. But Luke knew humans were clever, brave, and capable of more than anyone believed. He spent the next several days moving the Mythic through hidden regions of space, testing engines, shields, and sensors. Every system seemed to respond to him perfectly. The ship adapted to his style, anticipating his actions. Luke marveled at the partnership they were forming. It was more than human and machine. It was teamwork, trust, and understanding. One day, while examining a distant nebula, Luke discovered something extraordinary. A network of energy currents flowed through space, invisible to ordinary sensors. The Mythic systems lit up when they approached, showing pathways through the currents. Luke realized the ship could travel faster and more efficiently than anyone had thought possible. It could move through space in ways humans had only dreamed of. He smiled, imagining the possibilities. Humans, dismissed and underestimated, could now compete in a galaxy that had always ignored them. With the Mythic, they could explore, defend themselves, and prove their worth. Luke felt proud, not just for himself, but for all of humanity. But he also knew danger was near. Alien ships had been tracking unusual energy signatures, and they would not give up easily. Luke needed to learn faster, prepare smarter, and act with courage. The Mythic was powerful, but it was still a challenge to control. Luke spent long nights studying, testing, and exploring. The ship responded to him, almost as if it were alive. Every day, he learned something new. Hidden compartments revealed advanced systems, defensive technologies, and engines that could manipulate energy in incredible ways. Luke realized the ship had survived for centuries, waiting for someone who could understand it. And now, that someone was him. Luke knew the adventure had only begun. The galaxy would not accept a human with a Mythic easily. Alien authorities would come. Other humans would never believe him. But he had knowledge, skill, and courage. And with the Mythic, he had power beyond imagination. The first steps of discovery had ended. Now, the real challenge began: learning the full potential of the Mythic, surviving the threats from alien forces, and proving that humans were more than they seemed. Luke Harrison smiled as he set a course for unknown regions, ready to face whatever the galaxy would throw at him. Luke Harrison had been exploring the Outer Rim for days. The Mythic moved like it had a mind of its own, gliding smoothly through asteroid fields and hidden corridors of space. Luke had grown more confident with every maneuver. He could feel the ship learning with him, responding to his instincts, and even anticipating dangers before he saw them. It was an incredible feeling. Humans had always been underestimated in the galaxy, but now, with the Mythic, he could see that intelligence and courage could make a difference. But the aliens were not far behind. Their monitoring ships had been following him for days, careful to avoid direct confrontation, but always watching. Luke knew that sooner or later, he would have to face them. He had been practicing evasive maneuvers, testing the shields, and learning how the ship could hide itself. He had to be ready. One morning, as the Mythic glided past a dense asteroid belt, Luke noticed flashes of light on his sensors. Alien ships were moving in, forming a loose formation around him. He counted at least 6 vessels, all heavily armed. He took a deep breath. This was the moment he had been preparing for. Luke adjusted the controls carefully. The Mythic responded instantly, weaving through the asteroids like it was part of him. The alien ships followed. But the asteroid field was dense, and their larger size made it difficult for them to move quickly. Luke's hands flew across the panels, adjusting shields and engines. Every movement was precise, every decision calculated. The aliens fired, energy beams cutting through the dark space. The Mythic's shields glowed as they absorbed the impact, protecting the ship. Luke felt a thrill. He had never been in a real battle before, but he trusted the ship. Together, they could survive. He guided the Mythic in sharp turns, dodging the attacks, while slipping through narrow gaps between asteroids. The aliens were surprised. They had assumed a human could never control a Mythic, could never survive against their forces. Luke smiled at the thought. They had underestimated him, and that was their first mistake. He activated the ship's cloaking system, bending light around it. The Mythic disappeared from the alien sensors, leaving only a faint trace of energy. Luke held his breath as the aliens scanned the area, confused. The ships moved past, searching, but they could not detect him. Luke had outsmarted them. After the danger passed, Luke allowed himself a moment to breathe. He realized that the Mythic was more than just a ship. It was a partner, a teacher, and a protector. It had survived for centuries, waiting for someone clever enough to understand it. Now, that someone was him. But the thrill of the chase did not last long. The alien ships regrouped and followed him again. This time, more cautiously. Luke knew he could not run forever. He needed a plan. He had to prove that humans were more than just weak and simple. He had to show that humans could think, adapt, and overcome challenges that even advanced aliens could not. Luke studied the star maps displayed in the cockpit. He noticed a network of asteroid tunnels that could serve as a trap. He could lure the aliens into these narrow passages, where their larger ships would have difficulty maneuvering. The Mythic could move freely, and he could use the terrain to his advantage. He adjusted the course and accelerated toward the asteroid tunnels. The alien ships followed, confident that they could corner him. But as they entered the dense field, Luke's plan came to life. He guided the Mythic in sharp turns, weaving through the rocks with perfect precision. The alien ships struggled, colliding with asteroids, firing blindly, and causing small explosions in the debris. Luke grinned. This was what humans were best at: thinking quickly, adapting, and using creativity to survive. The aliens had technology, strength, and numbers, but they lacked the unpredictable imagination that humans had. Luke felt proud of his species as he outmaneuvered them, using the Mythic's advanced systems in ways the aliens could not anticipate. After hours of pursuit, Luke led the aliens into a large asteroid canyon. He activated a series of automated defenses in the Mythic, small energy pulses that created obstacles in the path. The aliens panicked, trying to avoid the energy bursts, but their formations broke apart. One by one, they retreated, their ships damaged and unable to continue the pursuit. Luke allowed himself a moment of victory. He had survived the first real test. The aliens had come to take the Mythic, but he had outsmarted them. He realized that humans could be underestimated, but with intelligence, courage, and creativity, they could overcome almost any challenge. But he also knew the galaxy would not let him rest. The aliens would return, stronger and more determined. They would not forget that a human had taken a Mythic and survived. Luke had to prepare, learn, and strengthen his bond with the ship. He could not face the next challenge alone. Over the next few days, Luke explored more of the Mythic's systems. He discovered hidden compartments with advanced equipment, defensive technologies, and energy reserves that could power the ship for long periods. He learned how to manipulate the engines to move faster than any human vessel had ever traveled. He tested the weapon systems, not for attack, but for defense. He understood that true strength lay in control, intelligence, and strategy, not reckless force. One evening, while studying a distant nebula, Luke discovered a hidden signal. It was a distress call, faint and almost lost in the energy currents of space. The signal came from another human ship, stranded near a dangerous sector. Luke realized that he could not ignore it. Humans needed help, and with the Mythic, he could make a difference. He plotted a course for the stranded ship, moving carefully to avoid alien sensors. The Mythic responded instantly, adjusting engines, shields, and navigation to keep them safe. As they approached, Luke saw the human ship, small and damaged, floating near a field of unstable asteroids. The crew waved frantically, signaling for help. Luke guided the Mythic close, using precise maneuvers to create a safe path through the debris. He extended an energy tether from the Mythic, connecting it to the stranded ship. The crew looked amazed as the Mythic's systems stabilized their vessel, protecting it from collisions and energy discharges. "Who are you?" "I'm Luke," he said, smiling. "And this is, well, it's a Mythic. We can get you out of here safely." The humans worked together with Luke, following his directions to guide their ship to safety. The Mythic seemed to respond to their combined efforts, adjusting automatically to prevent accidents. By the time they reached open space, the crew was amazed and grateful. Luke realized something important. Humans were often underestimated, but they could achieve great things when they worked together. When they used intelligence and creativity, the Mythic had chosen him, but together with other humans, they could accomplish even more. After helping the stranded crew, Luke continued to explore unknown regions of space. He discovered hidden asteroid fields, abandoned stations, and ancient relics. Each discovery tested his skills and the Mythic's abilities. Each challenge proved that humans, clever and adaptable, could rise above limits imposed by the galaxy. But danger was never far. Alien monitoring ships continued to track unusual energy patterns. Luke knew they would come back, stronger and more determined. He had survived one confrontation, but the next would be harder. He had to learn everything about the Mythic, master its abilities, and prepare for a battle that could determine the place of humans in the galaxy. Luke spent long nights in the cockpit, studying star maps, analyzing alien technology, and planning strategies. The Mythic seemed to understand his thoughts, anticipating actions, and offering guidance through subtle energy pulses and shifts in the controls. Luke realized that he had found not just a ship, but a partner, a friend, and a teacher. The bond between human and Mythic grew stronger with each passing day. Luke learned to trust the ship, and the ship seemed to trust him in return. Together, they were unstoppable, clever, and brave. The aliens had always assumed humans were weak, simple, and easy to control. Luke knew the truth. Humans could think, adapt, and overcome challenges that no one else could. As Luke set a course for a distant star system, he reflected on everything he had learned. The Mythic was powerful, but it was also intelligent. He was not just a pilot. He was a partner, a strategist, and a human who could rise to any challenge. The galaxy had underestimated humans for too long, but with courage, creativity, and determination, Luke knew they could prove their worth. The adventure was far from over. Alien forces would return, new challenges would appear, and the Mythic held secrets, still waiting to be discovered. But Luke was ready. He had survived the first test, helped others, and proven that humans could rise above the limits the galaxy had set for them. With a final glance at the stars, Luke smiled. The Mythic hummed softly beneath him, alive and aware, ready for whatever came next. Together, they would face the galaxy, overcome dangers, and show that humans, clever and bold, could achieve greatness beyond imagination. Luke Harrison had spent weeks learning the full power of the Mythic. Every system, every engine, every shield and weapon had been tested. He had learned to navigate asteroid fields, evade alien monitoring ships, and even help stranded humans in dangerous parts of space. But he knew that the real challenge was still ahead. The galaxy would not ignore a human with a Mythic for long. One morning, Luke noticed a strange pattern on the ship's sensors. A fleet of alien ships was approaching fast. This time, it was not just a few scouts, It was an entire fleet, heavily armed and moving with precision. They had tracked the Mythic's energy signals and were coming to take it by force. Luke's hands tightened on the controls. He had to act carefully. There was no room for mistakes. He quickly studied the formation. The aliens planned to trap him near a gas giant, using its gravity to limit the Mythic's movements. Luke thought fast. The gas giant's moons could provide cover, and the asteroid belts nearby could serve as obstacles. He calculated a path that would let him use the environment to his advantage. Activating the Mythic's engines, he moved toward the moons. The fleet followed, confident that the Mythic could not escape. Luke guided the ship through tight corridors of rock and ice. The alien ships struggled to follow, their larger size making them slow and vulnerable. Humans had always been underestimated, but intelligence, quick thinking, and adaptability could overcome numbers and power. The first attack came as energy beams cut through space. Luke adjusted the shields, feeling the protective hum of the Mythic respond instantly. He twisted the controls, dodging rocks and ice, while the alien fleet struggled to keep formation. One by one, they began to collide with debris or fire in the wrong direction. Luke grinned. The Mythic was alive, reacting to him, and together, they were unbeatable. But the aliens were clever. They regrouped and tried a different approach, flanking the Mythic from multiple angles. Luke realized that raw power alone would not win this fight. He had to use strategy, prediction, and creativity. He activated the Mythic's advanced sensors, mapping the fleet's movements and anticipating their next attacks. He led the alien ships into a narrow canyon between two massive moons. The fleet had no room to maneuver. The Mythic glided smoothly, dodging every obstacle, while the aliens struggled, colliding with rocks and each other. Luke felt the thrill of victory, but remained focused. One mistake could destroy everything. The aliens attempted to disable the Mythic's systems with energy pulses. Luke activated defensive shields and countermeasures, sending small pulses back that disrupted their targeting systems. The Mythic seemed to work in perfect harmony with him, anticipating each move and responding instantly. It was a partnership like no other, combining human intuition with alien technology. Hours passed as the battle continued. Luke used every trick he knew, hiding in asteroid fields, creating false energy signatures, and even pretending to retreat to lure the aliens into traps. Each time, the Mythic responded perfectly, giving him an advantage that the aliens could not understand. They had never seen a human pilot capable of thinking like this. Finally, after a long and exhausting chase, the alien fleet began to retreat. They had underestimated the human and the Mythic. Luke allowed himself a moment of relief. He had survived, outsmarted a fleet, and proven that humans could rise above any challenge when they used their intelligence and courage. But Luke did not celebrate. He knew the galaxy would still watch him. The Mythic held secrets and power that many would want, and humans were still considered weak by most alien civilizations. Luke had to show not just survival, but mastery. He had to prove that humans could be respected and trusted among the stars. He decided to take the Mythic on a mission of exploration. There were uncharted systems, abandoned stations, and distant colonies that had never seen humans before. Luke wanted to show what humans could do when given the tools, knowledge, and freedom to act. Their first stop was a remote planet with a colony struggling under unstable conditions. The colony's power systems were failing, and their communication arrays were broken. Luke guided the Mythic into orbit and used the ship's advanced energy systems to stabilize the colony's power. Lights flickered on across the surface, machines whirred to life, and the colonists looked up in awe. "We didn't think anyone could help us," a colonist said. "Especially not humans." Luke smiled. "Humans can do more than you think," he said simply. Sometimes, all it takes is courage, creativity, and determination. The Mythic hummed softly, as if agreeing. Luke realized that humans were often dismissed, ignored, and underestimated. But when given the chance, they could achieve greatness. They could survive, adapt, and overcome even the most impossible challenges. Over the next weeks, Luke and the Mythic traveled to distant sectors, helping colonies, repairing ships, and uncovering lost technology. Each time, humans who had never believed in their own potential were amazed. Luke became a symbol of human ingenuity, showing that courage and intelligence could rival even the most advanced civilizations. But the Mythic still held secrets. Luke discovered hidden archives within the ship, ancient maps, and star charts that pointed to unknown regions of space. He realized that the Mythic was not just a ship, it was a key to the galaxy's lost knowledge. Luke began studying these maps, imagining the possibilities. Humans could explore, learn, and achieve things no one had thought possible. One day, while traveling through a dense nebula, Luke detected a faint signal. It was an old distress call, decades old, from a ship that had vanished without a trace. Most species had given up on it, assuming it was lost forever. But Luke refused to ignore it. Humans had always been curious and persistent. He set a course for the signal, determined to uncover the mystery. Navigating through the nebula was difficult. Thick clouds of gas interfered with sensors, and unseen debris threatened the ship. But the Mythic moved as if it knew the path. Luke followed, trusting the ship completely. After hours of careful navigation, they reached the source of the signal, a derelict ship, drifting silently in space. Luke docked the Mythic carefully, entering the abandoned ship. Inside, he found signs of an old crew, long gone. But there were also records, logs, and data that had been preserved. Luke spent hours reading through them, learning about lost technology, forgotten civilizations, and incredible discoveries. Humans had always been curious, and now, Luke had the chance to connect the past to the future. Returning to the Mythic, Luke realized that humans were no longer just survivors. They were explorers, innovators, and problem solvers. The galaxy had doubted them. But now, with courage, intelligence, and determination, they could achieve anything. As Luke piloted the Mythic through the nebula, he thought about the journey so far. He had survived alien fleets, outsmarted powerful civilizations, and uncovered secrets thought lost to time. The Mythic had chosen him, but he had also proven himself worthy. Humans could rise to challenges no one expected them to face. Word began to spread across star systems. Humans, once considered weak and simple, were now seen in a new light. Stories of Luke and the Mythic traveled faster than light, inspiring other humans and surprising alien civilizations. Luke knew this was just the beginning. The galaxy would continue to test them, but humans were ready. Finally, as they left the nebula and entered open space, Luke set a course for an uncharted system. He smiled, knowing that the Mythic, alive and aware, was ready to explore with him. Together, they would uncover secrets, face dangers, and prove that humans could achieve greatness beyond imagination. Luke Harrison had started as a simple engineer, curious about machines and old ships. Now, he was a pioneer, a hero, and a symbol of human potential. The Mythic was more than a ship, it was a partner, a teacher, and a testament to what humans could accomplish when they were clever, brave, and determined. The galaxy had doubted humans for too long. Luke was about to show them what they had missed. And with the Mythic by his side, there was no limit to what humans could achieve.
No humans were allowed near Mythic ships, until I stumbled on one at a scrap auction.